Hello everyone, and welcome to a new lesson. Imagine you're talking with a coworker named John. John says, "I thought Helen's behavior during that meeting was extraordinary." You smile and reply, "I couldn't believe how rude she was." John looks surprised. "Rude? No, I thought she was great. When she believes in something, she's not afraid to speak her mind." So, what just happened here? At first, both people thought they agreed because they were talking in general terms. They both used the word extraordinary, but each person attached a completely different meaning to it. The misunderstanding didn't become obvious until they started giving specific details. That is exactly why today's lesson is so important. Supporting details help us move from general ideas to specific meaning. They explain exactly what the author means and reduce the chances that readers will misunderstand the message. In other words, supporting details don't just add information, they guide our interpretation of the text. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to identify major and minor supporting details, decide which details are truly important, and recognize the clues authors leave behind to help you understand paragraphs more quickly and accurately. So, let's get started. To make this concept easy to understand, imagine that every paragraph is a tree. The topic sentence is the trunk. The trunk supports the entire tree. But by itself, it isn't enough. A trunk without branches doesn't tell us very much. The same thing happens with a topic sentence. A topic sentence introduces the author's main idea, but it usually raises questions that still need to be answered. Let's look at an example. Feel free to pause it to read it as many times as you need.
Prolonged unemployment can create serious psychological problems that, in the long run, actually contribute to continued joblessness. In a society that stresses the relationship between productive work and personal value, it is easy enough to equate long-term unemployment with personal worthlessness. That is, in fact, precisely what many unemployed men and women begin to do. Out of a job for a year or more, they start to see themselves as personally worthless and without value to society. In what amounts to a vicious cycle, this sense of personal worthlessness further diminishes their chances of gaining employment. Sometimes, the unemployed stop looking for work altogether, sure in their despair that no one will hire them. Or else they go to interviews but present themselves in such a defeated and hopeless fashion that the interviewer is unimpressed and rejects their application.
Now, let's focus on the first sentence.
Prolonged unemployment can create serious psychological problems that, in the long run, actually contribute to continued joblessness.
As soon as you read it, you should naturally have questions. For example, what does the author mean by prolonged unemployment? What psychological problems is the author talking about? How can those problems actually lead to continued unemployment? Notice something important here. The topic sentence introduces the main idea, but it doesn't answer those questions. That's the job of the supporting details. Supporting details explain, clarify, prove, or illustrate the author's main idea. Without them, the paragraph would feel incomplete. So, whenever you read a paragraph, don't stop after identifying the topic sentence. Instead, ask yourself two simple questions. Question 1. What type of supporting details is the author using? Are they giving examples, reasons, definitions, statistics, studies, descriptions, or something else? Knowing the type of detail helps you understand the author's purpose. Question 2. What question about the main idea does this detail answer? This question is even more important. Every supporting detail should help answer one of these questions raised by the topic sentence. Let's apply that strategy to our paragraph. The author later explained that prolonged unemployment means being unemployed for a year or more. So one of our questions has been answered. Next, the author explains the psychological problem. People who remain unemployed for a long time may begin to feel that they have little value as individuals. They may even believe they have nothing meaningful to contribute to society. Finally, the author explains how those feelings can make unemployment continue. Some people become so discouraged that they stop looking for work. Others still go to interviews, but they appear defeated and hopeless, making it less likely that employers will hire them. Now, the entire paragraph makes sense. Notice what happened here. The supporting details answer the questions that the topic sentence raised. That is exactly how supporting details work. They transform a broad statement into a complete explanation. Whenever you finish reading a paragraph, ask yourself, do I understand how each supporting detail helps explain the topic sentence? If the answer is yes, you've understood the paragraph. If the answer is no, don't keep reading yet. Go back and figure out how those details actually connect to the author's main idea. That one habit will dramatically improve your reading comprehension. Now that you understand what supporting details do, let's take the next step. Not all supporting details play the same role. Some connect directly to the topic sentence, while others support those supporting details. For that reason, we divide supporting details into two types: major supporting details and minor supporting details. Let's go back to our tree. The topic sentence, we said, is the trunk. The major details are the thick branches that grow directly from the trunk. The minor details are the smaller branches and leaves that grow from those larger branches. Understanding the structure makes it much easier to see how a paragraph is organized. Let's look at an example.
Psychologists have identified 3 basic styles of parenting. Controlling parents think their children have few rights and many responsibilities. They tend to demand strict obedience to rigid standards of behavior and expect their children to obey their commands unquestioningly. Permissive parents, in contrast, require little responsible behavior from their children. Rules are not enforced, and the child usually gets his or her own way. Effective parents find a balance between their rights and their children's rights. They control their children's behavior without being harsh or rigid.
Now, let's identify the topic sentence. The first sentence tells us,
Psychologists have identified 3 basic styles of parenting.
Whenever you read a topic sentence, ask yourself, what question does this sentence really raise? In this case, the answer is obvious. What are the 3 parenting styles? As you continue reading, the author answers that question by introducing controlling parents, permissive parents, and effective parents. These are the major details because each one connects directly to the topic sentence. Think of them as the 3 main branches growing out of the trunk. But the paragraph doesn't stop there. After introducing controlling parents, the author says, They tend to demand strict obedience to rigid standards of behavior and expect their children to obey their commands unquestioningly. Ask yourself now, is the author introducing another parenting style? No, the author is actually simply giving us more information about the parenting style that was just introduced. That makes the sentence a minor detail. It supports the major detail, but not the topic sentence directly. The same pattern appears again. After introducing permissive parents, the author explains that they enforce very few rules and usually allow children to have their own way. Again, this is a minor detail because it explains the major detail. Finally, after introducing effective parents, the author explains that they guide their children without becoming harsh or overly strict. Once again, that's a minor detail. Notice the pattern here. The paragraph follows a very organized structure. First, the author introduces the topic sentence. Immediately after that, the author introduces a major detail. Then, the author explains it with one or more minor details. Once you recognize this pattern, paragraphs become much easier to understand. Instead of seeing one long block of text, you begin to see its organization. Here's a simple way to remember the difference. Major details answer the main question raised by the topic sentence. Minor details, on the other side, answer questions about the major details. That distinction is extremely important. Many students correctly identify the topic sentence, but then they treat every supporting sentence as equally important. However, experienced readers don't do that. They recognize that paragraphs have levels of information. Some sentences introduce the author's major points. Others simply develop those points by adding explanations, descriptions, examples, or evidence. When you learn to recognize those levels, you don't just read paragraphs, you understand how the author builds them. And that's exactly what strong readers do. Now, here's something that surprises many students. The word minor makes it sound as if those details aren't very important, but that's not always true. In fact, some minor details are absolutely essential for understanding the paragraph. Let's see how to tell the difference. Now let's look at a different situation. Sometimes an author gives two minor details in a row after introducing a major detail. That doesn't automatically mean both minor details are equally important. Let's see an example.
Vision is the slowest of the senses to develop in infants. Infants have blurry vision at birth, but their visual world is not a complete blur. They can see closer objects more clearly and can discern meaningful patterns. For example, newborns show preferences for looking at face-like patterns over non-face-like patterns. They can recognize their own mother's face and even show a preference for looking at her face over other faces.
Let's focus on the last three sentences. The major detail tells us that infants can recognize meaningful patterns, but that raises a question. What does the author mean by meaningful patterns? The next sentence answers that question. For example, newborns show preferences for looking at face-like patterns over non-face-like patterns. This is a minor detail, but it does much more than provide an example. It explains exactly what the author means by meaningful patterns. Let's use our "what do we lose" test. If we remove this sentence, do we lose anything important? Absolutely. Without it, the phrase meaningful patterns remains vague. We don't know what the author is talking about. This minor detail is the fruit of our tree. It provides information that is necessary for understanding the paragraph. Now, let's look at the final sentence. They can recognize their own mother's face and even show a preference for looking at her face over other faces. Again, let's apply the same test. If we remove this sentence, what do we lose? Well, not much. We already understand the author's point. We already know what the author means by meaningful patterns. This sentence simply gives us another more specific example. It's interesting and it certainly adds information, but it isn't necessary for understanding the paragraph. In our tree analogy, this is an extra leaf, not the fruit. So, this is a non-essential minor detail. Notice something important here. A non-essential detail is not the same as an irrelevant detail. A non-essential detail supports the author's main idea. It simply isn't necessary for understanding it. But an irrelevant detail, on the other hand, doesn't support the paragraph at all. We'll learn how to recognize those in just a moment. So, here's the idea I want you to remember. Not all minor details have the same value. Some minor details are essential because they explain ideas that would otherwise remain unclear. Others are non-essential because they simply provide additional illustrations or examples after the main idea has already been explained. As you become a stronger reader, you'll learn to tell the difference. That skill is especially useful when you are studying. Instead of trying to memorize every sentence, you'll recognize which details are essential for understanding the author's message and which ones simply help reinforce it. All right. It's time for a pop quiz. I'm going to put a paragraph on the screen. There is one detail in this paragraph that is a completely irrelevant leaf. I want you to read the entire paragraph carefully and see if you can identify that irrelevant detail. Ready? Go.
Orthorexia nervosa is an eating disorder that occurs when health-conscious individuals become obsessed with the quality of the food they eat. People who suffer from this disorder base their self-esteem on their ability to maintain a diet of only healthy foods. They decide, for example, that beans and rice are healthy and restrict themselves to eating only those two foods. Should they go off their restricted diet, they feel intensely guilty and depressed. Bulimics overeat and then feel guilty about the amount of food they have consumed. Victims of orthorexia nervosa don't seem to realize that excessive reliance on a few select foods can deprive their bodies of critical nutrients.
Did you find it? The irrelevant detail is in sentence 5. The entire paragraph is about orthorexia nervosa, but sentence 5 suddenly shifts to bulimia without relating it back to orthorexia. That's why it doesn't belong. Great job if you caught that. Now that you've practiced identifying details within a paragraph, let's look at something that can make textbook reading much easier. How can you quickly identify the major details in a paragraph? Fortunately, authors usually leave us some clues. Let's look at what those clues are. Now that you've practiced identifying supporting details, let's answer another important question. When you are reading a textbook, how can you quickly identify the major details? Fortunately, authors often leave clues that make them easy to find. Today, we're going to look at two of the most common clues. The first clue is something called a category word. A category word is a broad word that refers to a group of more specific items. Some common category words include types, forms, styles, reasons, characteristics. These words tell you that the author is about to discuss several major details. For example, suppose the topic sentence says, child abuse can take several different forms. The category word is forms. As you continue reading, each new form of child abuse that the author introduces becomes a major detail. Category words help you anticipate how the paragraphs will be organized before you even finish reading it. Another thing you'll notice is that authors often repeat the category word as they move from one major detail to the next. Repeating that word helps create a smooth transition from one idea to another. The second clue is addition transitions. These are transition words and phrases such as first, second, furthermore, moreover, in addition. When authors use these transitions, they're signaling that they are adding another supporting point to the paragraph. In other words, they are often introducing another major detail. Think of these transitions as signposts. They help guide you through the paragraph and show you how the author's ideas are organized. When you notice these words while reading, pay close attention to what comes next. There's a good chance you've just found another major detail. Before we move on, here's one important thing to remember. These clues are helpful, but they don't appear in every paragraph. Sometimes authors use category words and addition transitions. Other times they don't. An author may introduce the topic sentence and move directly into the first major detail without using any transition at all. When that happens, don't assume you've missed something. Instead, focus on understanding how each supporting detail connects to the topic sentence. Think of these clues as helpful guides, not strict rules. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to recognize the organization of a paragraph, even when the clues aren't obvious. There's one final part of a paragraph that you should learn to recognize. Sometimes the last sentence of a paragraph functions as a concluding sentence. A concluding sentence doesn't always provide another supporting detail. Instead, it often tells you how the situation described in the paragraph was resolved or what happened as a result. Let's look at an example.
From 1692 through 1693, Salem, Massachusetts, was the scene of a series of witchcraft trials. The trials began when 4 young girls, Betty Paris, Abigail Williams, Elizabeth Hubbard, and Ann Putnam Jr., appeared to be suffering fits of madness during which they threw themselves on the floor screaming in terror or whimpered and hid under the bed. During these bouts, the girls accused several men and women in the town of dealings with the devil. The girls' accusations were believed, and before the townspeople came to their senses, 19 men and women had been hanged. Many others were cruelly tortured, tormented, and imprisoned, until it became clear that the girls had been lying all along and there were no witches in Salem. Following the events in Salem, witchcraft trials practically disappeared from the colonies.
Now, let's focus on the last sentence.
Following the events in Salem, witchcraft trials practically disappeared from the colonies.
Notice what the author does here. Instead of continuing to describe the Salem trials, the author tells us what happened after those events. This sentence doesn't add another supporting detail about the trials themselves. Instead, it explains what happened as a result of the events described in the paragraph. That's what a concluding sentence often does. It helps bring the paragraph to a close by showing how the situation ended or was resolved. As you're reading, don't skip over the last sentence. It may give you important information about the author's final point or help prepare you for what comes next. All right, that brings us to the end of today's lesson. Let's quickly review what we've learned. Supporting details make general statements more specific and help readers understand exactly what the author means. We learned how to distinguish between major details and minor details, how to determine whether a minor detail is essential or non-essential, and how to use clues such as category words and addition transitions to identify major details more quickly. We also saw that some paragraphs end with a concluding sentence that tells us how the situation was resolved and what happened afterward. So you're going to ask yourself, why is all this important? Imagine you're taking an exam and you're asked, explain how prolonged unemployment can contribute to continued joblessness. The topic sentence alone won't answer that question. To answer it correctly, you need to understand the supporting details that explain the author's main idea. That's why supporting details matter. They help you move beyond simply identifying the topic and toward truly understanding the paragraph. The better you understand how supporting details work, the stronger your reading comprehension will become. Well, if you found this lesson helpful, be sure to click the like button so this video can reach more students like you. I'd also love to hear from you. Which clue do you find most helpful for identifying major details? Is that category words or is it addition transitions? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you won't miss our next lesson. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.